Meta may shut down Facebook and Instagram in Europe in the next few months. Boy, that's a message that's been going on through the internet and media over the past few days. And if you take a look at all these reports, it even seems like there's a fight between Meta and Europe going on. You know, also people cheering how great that would be, politicians cheering. I mean, just look at this. Zuckerberg and team consider shutting down in Europe. And specifically, it's this sentence found in Meta's annual K10 report. We're going to talk about what this report actually is in a second without confusing you, because all these numbers and letters is kind of weird. But basically what they say is, if we are unable to continue to rely on alternative means of data transfers from Europe to the United States, we will likely be unable to continue to offer Facebook and Instagram in Europe, which would, pretty much affect our business, financial conditions, and our whole business. That's what Meta basically said. And actually it took a while for the mainstream to find the sentence in this report, even though it's only on page 9 of 134. Also, this report's been out since pretty much a week, and they only started talking about this recently anyway. The Meta stock crashed. Everything is going crazy. People are jumping because Facebook is threatening to pull Instagram out of Europe, right? So what is this whole thing really about? Do we really have to brace for impact? What is the catch? Am I maybe even out of a job? Probably not, as it seems like journalists, they just can't get off of this overly sensational train with news that actually don't have a lot to do with what their headlines might suggest. Let me try to explain. If we break it down to the core, this whole thing is about data protection. The European GDPR, data protection law, you probably noticed it since this whole thing is in effect. Those cookie things are just annoying, pissing me out. It's not making anything better, to be honest. So yeah, as you might know, data protection and data protection laws are a very important thing for European lawmakers, because data privacy, obviously, it's a good thing if you think about it, which is why in Austria, I can't even go outside to buy a shoe without showing and disclosing my medical status. Actually, I'm not even allowed to buy shoes if I don't show the person outside that I didn't get a certain medical treatment that's traditionally applied with the syringe, if you know what I mean. But I digress, my friends. Now, without getting too technical, Europe is allowing data transfers to non-European states if they're equally as secure as they are in Europe. Because in Europe, we're kind of secure with those cookie things and like a lot of things that are very technical. There's been some lawsuits. Europe says, well, the US is not equally as secure as we are, because look at the NSA and all of these things, which is a fair point to make, to be honest. And right now, there's negotiations on how to actually make this thing work between Europe and the US. So yes, there is a slight chance that they can't make this whole thing work with their current business model and or technology, because who knows, maybe they can figure out some technology where they can sort of make it more private. Don't ask me, but yeah. But in the very slim chance that they can't figure out a way to make this work, yes, Meta/Instagram and Facebook would not be allowed to operate in Europe anymore. In which case, they would really have to pull out of Europe, making lots of European people out of their Instagram accounts, out of their income. Look, because lots of people earn lots of small businesses also earn a lot through Facebook ads. But this would obviously also affect the whole world. Anyway, here's where it gets interesting, and here's where this annual K10 report comes into play, which is basically a required thing for publicly traded companies. You know, basically something for investors, something for shareholders to know what's up with the company that they're investing in. Now, this K10 report has very strict guidelines on what information must be included and how it must be organized. And part of that are actually risk factors for the business because of the shareholders. Some of them obviously are very abstract, very broad, because obviously they wanna and possibly they have to include certain negative possibilities of the business, because that's just the law, because they're required to disclose, you know, worst case scenarios for their shareholders. For example, the Swiss shoemaker sneaker company, I believe it was they warned in their last report that if those supply shortages that are caused by obviously the pandemic, they most likely go bankrupt. Yeah, just because that's a possibility. Same thing goes with Meta threatening to pull out of Europe. It's actually just a disclosure. It's just a few sentences in this K10 report, sort of a worst case scenario in their annual report for shareholders. And guess what's happening right now? All these journalists are just going crazy about it. I'm actually sure most of them don't even read the whole thing. I'm sure they don't even understand what this whole thing is about. So yeah, in my opinion, they're not even threatening to pull out. They're just discussing a worst case scenario, like I said. Still, it could happen. Probably might take a while. It's not gonna happen within the next few months because the risk is still there. The main takeaway for you from this whole thing should be that this whole thing is yet another time showing us how vulnerable this whole social media bubble actually is. What would you do if suddenly they decided to delete your profile, you know, because you said something wrong, or because of this, or delete the whole platform, which would be crazy, but it could happen. Also, the algorithm just start to act up on your profile and you just don't get reach anymore, which a lot of people right now sort of have this issue. Now, to make sure you're set up for when this happens, you know, for the future, if you will, you really need to watch this video that really prepares you for this impending Instagram doom. Yeah, for real.